Hi, I'm Steve, and welcome to this episode of Our Road to Camelot. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about how we plan these epic full summer long vacations. So we'll get to it right after this. So you might be wondering, where is Dawn? Well, basically, what's been happening is she had to go in for a surgical procedure. For those close friends and families, a lot of you know about this, but she hasn't told everybody, so you kind of find out now. I won't go into detail to what took place, but she is recovering. She's doing great. Surgery was 100% perfect. Had a great doctor, great surgeon, and she is on the mend. So she might be out for a few more weeks, but until then, we're going to carry on. Okay, so this year's vacation plan, 2021, is monumental in a number of ways. One, we are covering just a tremendous amount of mileage. On top of it, 40 years ago in 1991, we had a similar epic vacation that took us through a lot of the same areas through the southern states. Now, what we're going to do in little over 5 months this year, we basically did in 1 month back in 1991. So, yeah, we traveled a lot of ground in those days. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I do have my notes directly in front of me, so if you see me glancing down like this, I'm kind of making sure I'm on task here, which I pretty much got off already. So how do we go about putting the itineraries together? Well, Dawn and the pups like to be surprised. Dawn, even back then in 1991, she really said, you know what, you figure it out. I'm just going to go along for the ride. So it's always been up to me to plan that. Now, you may be in a relationship where you both want to jump in on it. And I do bring Dawn in on the decision making as I go. It's like, hey, I got this great idea. How about this? But most of the time she leaves it up to me to be the tour guide and cruise director. But if you guys do it together, however you want to do this, it's individual. Every time it's individual. So whether you're going to be gone for 2 weeks or for 5.5 months, variation of this plan should generally work. I also recommend that you start this process as soon as possible, because especially in 2021, post-COVID times, there are a lot of people out there on the road filling up campgrounds, and you need as much time as you can to get those reservations made. The old days, a couple of years back, when we could just be organic and call a day ahead of time and pull into any RV park we want, are gone. So plan way ahead, especially if you're going to some very specific special places. You want to be at least 6 months in advance on some of those, if not longer. So step one, I basically rough out a general direction. There's like maybe 2 or 3 major destinations that we want to see, and I'll map out a general direction to get to those destinations and then back home again. So this is just a rough trip. I knew I wanted to get to Florida this year. We talked about Disney World. This year it's kind of special because it's kind of empty right now because of the social distancing happening. I've wanted to get up into Maine, so we were going to hit the East Coast and then eventually back here to Arizona. So that was kind of the general plan that I laid out to start with. So when I laid that part out, there were some other areas that I was interested in. We want to see family in Arkansas. We also want to see, get to Tennessee. We have very special reasons why we want to go to the Shiloh National Memorial Battleground Park. Anyways, it's the site of the Civil War battle Shiloh. In a nutshell, my great-grandfather and Dawn's great-great-grandfather fought against each other in that battle. So we kind of have a personal interest there. We want to make sure that they weren't shooting at each other. So we're going to basically do that trip as well. So that was all kind of factored in. The Little Rock, Arkansas, and Shiloh be better on the way there or on the way back. We do want to see a lot of the southern spots like New Orleans and things like that. So I kind of figured out how that would best lay out. Once I had it roughed out, The next step is to go through and figure out what are the miles for that trip. So I roughly go through mileage. I'm not worried about individual stops just yet. I just want to know how long is this entire trip going to take, how many miles. I work better if I subdivide. Now realize our budget for travel has been set up for 1,000 miles a month. That's kind of how I set it up. So when I finished, if we were over that mileage, then I want to basically either decide, is it only over a little bit to where we want to go ahead and add those miles in, or do we want to back out of it and maybe change some of the trip so we're not going quite so many miles. This year, it wasn't that many miles over, so we decided to add some of those miles in. Then basically what I do is I find the center point. Where is halfway through the trip mileage-wise? And then I go ahead in my spreadsheet, I'll find that point, I'll find the halfway point in the time we have to travel in, and I'll lock that place down, wherever we may be halfway through the trip. So I know that we have 2.5 months to get to that point, and then 2.5 months to get home. That kind of works best for me on laying it out that way. Now, I can adjust that, give or take a little bit, depending on points of interest. I may have more places we want to stay longer at the beginning than the end, or vice versa, but I at least have a halfway point marked down. I like subdividing. Sometimes if it's a big enough trip, I may subdivide the half into quarters. Some people can vision the entire trip as one long giant trip. More power to you. I don't work that way, but if you do, that's the way you need to build this trip. So that's kind of the way I have it laid out. So once I have that done, before I actually lay dates down, I'm going to go through the mileage again. This time when I go through the mileage, I'm going to be looking for stops. We like to travel 300 miles at the most in a day, no more than 400. I've found that we're going to be doing a lot of highway driving on this trip, so 400 may be okay, but I like to keep the mileage to 300 or less if at all possible. So I will go through each leg of the trip, plotting out what is a point of interest, a secondary point of interest in each 300-mile segment. Or like I said, 400 tops. And I will basically go through the entire trip doing that, marking down spots. Now, mind you, I kind of alluded to it before, I do all of this on a spreadsheet, so I can then easily move things around and adjust and tweak any way I can once I get it laid in. In the spreadsheet, I also mark down what are those points of interest, because if I mention a town and I don't mention what I found at that time, then I have to do work all over again to figure out what those special points were. If I can't find anything within that 300 to 400 mile range or less, then I'll at least find a waypoint, someplace or in between that we can stay overnight. So let's say, for instance, 500 miles. I'm not going to drive 500 miles. Some of you may. I don't like that. So I will basically then look at the 250 mile mark. Is there a Cabela's, Bass Pro Shop, Walmart, better yet, Cracker Barrel, Flying J, someplace where we can stop overnight, sleep, get up the next morning, and get a good jump on it? Then that would basically be what I'd be looking for next. And until I have every single spot laid out for the trip. The next thing I do is I start going through the trip plans again, and I want to figure out how long do we want to stay at each site. You know, this is part of the reason why I like breaking it in half. It's a little bit easier to manage. So we'll take a look at and start roughing out now, how long do we want to stay at each place? Some locations, you don't need to be more than 2 or 3 days, maybe 3 or 4 days. There's not a lot to see. We do like to stay a week if possible, because if you stay a full week, you get breaks and discounts on camping. You get a chance to really see the area. And even if you run over and you don't have things to see, you still have to do basic household chores. You got to do laundry. Sometimes you got some maintenance to do. I've got editing that I like to do. I mean, we've got certain jobs that we want to do. Nothing more even to sit back and relax for a day, do nothing. You know, that's important as well. So we basically will then lay down how many nights at each location. I spend a lot of time on this. I try to envision the trip. I try to think, okay, this is where we're going to be. This is what we want to see. How fast paced do we want this to be? How slow do we want to take it at this point? Do we want to take some rest stops? Have we not had time to do laundry yet? I mean, these are really important things to look at, because life goes on. This is not a 5.5 month vacation. It's probably about a couple of weeks vacation wrapped up with a month or so of doing other chores and a little bit of time of just sightseeing. So that's kind of what we want to do. We want to break this down and take the time to really lock it in. To be honest, I completely revamped a lot of the trip after I realized I was spending way too much time in Arizona at the beginning on places that we could have gone and seen on a weekend or a single day trip. So I cut those out so we can get into the meat of the trip and add more time in places where we'd like to spend more time, and then see those Arizona sites when we're back here in Arizona. So I guess bottom line, what I'm trying to say is we don't want to feel rushed where we feel like we didn't get to see a place thoroughly enough. And we also don't want it to drag out. We don't want to find ourselves weeks or months, sitting in a spot where we're just not doing anything. I know last year it wasn't our fault. It wasn't by our design, but we spent an awful lot of time in Kalispell, did not get a lot of time to see Kalispell or the area because of Sierra going through her surgery. So sometimes life happens like that and you got to go with it. But basically, you want to keep a decent pace where we're not tiring ourselves out and we're also not spending too much time where we're getting bored. When we do get older, we may decide to slow down our pace. But to be honest, I kind of look at it that Dawn and I are still pretty young and foolish, at least at heart. And we want to see things. So we do keep a little bit more stringent pace when we do travel. But that's us. I love the energy, and that kind of drives me. If Dawn will tell me if I'm pushing too hard, and then I get a little antsy, but I'm okay with that. I don't know. I'm on the go, and that's just who I am. So what I'm trying to say all the way through this video, make it personal. If you want to sit in one spot all summer long, awesome. I have friends that do that. They love that lifestyle. Right now, there's too much of the country that Dawn and I want to see. So let's keep going. All right, so now we have all of our waypoints laid out. We have all of our mileage laid out. I start looking for campsites. Now, I break it down into priorities. Top priority. In fact, if you go through an earlier episode where I kind of go over my favorite apps, I have 3 apps that I use extensively for looking for campgrounds. Dawn has a couple of more that she throws in. Dawn likes the KOAs. I like KOAs, and if she was here, I would probably say, yeah, KOAs are great, but they're expensive, they're pricey. You get a KOA card, they take off 10%. 10% off a pricey is still kind of pricey. I like Passport America. We bought into it. It doesn't cost that much. And we can quit at any time. It's not like a membership where you're stuck and they will track down your next of kin if they don't take over your payments. This is you pay by the year, or you can pay years in advance to get better discounts. But you get 50% off of campground fees, and that comes with certain restrictions. Watch that video. I talk a lot more about it. It's not 50. Don't think it's 50% across the board. Some places it's 50% for 2 or 3 nights. Some places it restricts the time of the year that you get that 50%. But some places are wide open. So you get some, you use it a couple of times, it pays for itself for that year. So check out Passport America. After I check Passport America, if I don't see any places there, I'll go to Campendium. I love the Campendium app. It's basically campground reviews by us who are staying there. I could put a review in for a campground, and I basically get honest campground reviews from people who are out there camping. That is actually a good one. And then if I don't find anything that I'm looking for with Campendium, my follow-up is All Stays. I do find a lot of stuff in All Stays. But I like taking it in that order because I feel I get much more bang and much more power in my search that way. Dawn is the one that does a lot of the bookings. So yes, I do the planning. She does the bookings. She will go ahead and go in and call up, and sometimes she overrides my suggestion and she goes right to the KOA. I'm okay with that. She's the one that also gets mad at me if I book something without telling her and she thinks it's expensive, and then she gets KOA and it's going to be more. That's okay. Imagine Dawn right now giving me a dirty look. That's kind of the way this works. So yeah, we're going to basically, in fact, here we go. Here's Dawn's look. All right, let's go ahead and move on. So I mentioned this before, but if last year taught me anything, make reservations. Now, find a couple of the places that may be hard to get in the first place. The first reservation we made, in fact, while you're watching this video, we made this reservations like a month ago. We went ahead and signed in and got our time and our spot for the campground at Disney World at Fort Wilderness. So we already have our campsite there. We already have our park tickets. We already reserved what park we're going to be in, what day. So we already have all that laid out. And the cool thing about that is come April 2nd, that's 60 days before we arrive, we can actually go back on the Disney site and set up dinner reservations and fast pass reservations for rides that are difficult to get on. So we can go ahead and lay all that out 60 days in advance. Now, some of you think, I thought it was 180 days in advance. Well, pre-COVID, it was 180 days. Post-COVID, it's now 60. So if you're watching this video down the road, like maybe a year or so from now, and we're no longer in the whole COVID crisis, you better check with Disney and find out if they've changed back. So make sure that you know when those reservations open up and get online and reserve it immediately, as soon as possible when those dates open up. The next thing we did is we went ahead and set our reservation for Washington, D.C., which also happened to fall 4th of July there. So we set up for 2 weeks in Washington, D.C. So much to see in our nation's capital. Boy, I want to say it's over 50 years ago that I was there. I haven't been back since. So, yeah, we want to go to Washington, D.C. By the luck of the draw, it's hitting on the 4th. You better believe you need reservations, especially now, especially on the 4th, especially Washington, D.C. So we're all locked in there as well. I would say go through after that and check out all the other holiday weekends that you might be out for. So that included the 4th of July. Other holidays would be Labor Day, Memorial Day, Mother's Day weekend, especially Father's Day weekend. And to be honest, as far as camping goes, the entire month of August as sort of like campground season. So any of those, get those reservations in advance. Now, one last word on Disney. I would definitely suggest if you do plan a Disney vacation, especially now because they're limiting how many people can be in the park on any given day, you should be planning this out at least 6 months in advance. In fact, to be honest, for my entire vacation plan, we started doing this plan 6 months in advance. But I would not wait after 5. Get those plans started 5 to 6 minutes in advance to lay out the plan. You can always tweak it. You can always change dates, but at least get the plan laid out and organized. So after we've booked campgrounds for all of those holiday weekends, I now go in and start looking. Are we going to be in any national or state parks? Well, in this case, yes, we're going to be in a couple of national parks. And I may wind up, I haven't finished, but we may wind up in a few state parks because they tend to be a little bit better priced. And you do find some that will have hookups. But when we get up to Maine, we're going to be in Acadia National Park. We're going to be going through Hot Springs National Park in Arkansas. Shiloh is a national military park. So we have these kind of parks that we will be looking at. So now that I've laid out all those reservations, we go in and now we double check everything else, make sure everything's falling into place, and we book everything else at this point. We don't want to leave any place left unbooked this year. Like I said, this year's going to be difficult. We were lucky last year and we worked hard on getting those reservations in. So yeah, finish booking as soon as you can, at least a month out. All right, so that's basically the way we lay out a trip. And like I said, throughout this whole process, I will bring that locations up for Dawn. Tell you what, let's go ahead and take a look at this. I do have a template that I'll be sharing with you. I have a template of the spreadsheet I use to fill this out. If you're not into Google Docs, I would highly recommend look into Google Drive, look into Google Docs. They have a spreadsheet, they have a Word doc, only Google Doc, and you can actually create and plan and take notes and do all this in your Google Docs, and you can share that document with your spouse, with your family, with your kids. They will then have a copy of it. If not a copy, they will have the original to look at. You can share with them to either only be able to look at it, or if they're part of the planning process, give them editing rights. Don actually had editing rights, and I've actually shared it with family members. So I have a cousin that I'm hoping is going to be able to join up with us on part of the trip when we get down to Arkansas. So I share it with the people that you feel you want to share it with, and this way you can actually use that document. I'll share the spreadsheet that I use for laying out my plan, and you'll see each category and how it lays out. I do have the arrival date at each location. I don't put a departure date down because you realize the departure date is going to be the arrival date of the next location. So I have arrival date, how many days we're going to be staying there. I have the arrival location, the basic town, how many miles to that location, how many hours. Now, once again, this is, if you're using Google Maps hours, or Apple Map hours. RV hours will vary and are usually longer. I then put down what RV park that we're staying at, and did we book it yet? And if I have a confirmation number, I'll put the confirmation number in there on when we book it. So I have that confirmation number in the spreadsheet. I then also put a phone number down of the campground. I added a new category this year because we're going through the South. What is the average temperature the week and month that we're there? I don't like being uncomfortable, and I don't want to boondock if we're going to be in 80, 90 degree weather in the South. So I went ahead and did that before I even laid in the campground. So I don't see anything until we get up to Maine as far as not having hookups. We're going to have hookups the whole way this summer. And then I have one last category, and that is points of interest. So I'll lay in a whole bunch of points of interest of each area. Right now, I don't have a lot of it laid in. When Dawn's feeling better, I'm going to set her up with her laptop and let her start looking through it as well. Give her something to do while she's recuperating. But we will be going through this together. Like I said, we have a couple booked and a couple ready to go. But we're going to be seeing a lot of stuff. We're going to be going through Carlsbad Caverns, San Antonio, Texas, Austin, Texas, keep Austin weird. Houston, we've got a problem. We're going to be going to Houston, New Orleans, Disney World, Cape Canaveral, St. Augustine, Charleston, Raleigh. Dawn loves this one, Mount Airy, North Carolina. That's basically where the Andy Griffith Show was patterned after, was Mount Airy. So that's, if ever there's a Mayberry, that's the place. And that's just to name a few. That's not even halfway through the trip yet. So final comments that I want to make on this process. Each trip is unique. Each person planning the trip is unique. Each person going on the trip is unique. Look for things that interest you the most. If you don't like museums, don't plan museums. If you like hikes, plan a lot of hikes. We like to mix it up a lot, as you saw from previous episodes. Look for things that may not necessarily you'll be able to find at home. Find restaurants where you can taste and take part of the local cuisine. I guarantee in New Orleans, there's going to be crawdads on the plate. I mean, we're going to find some great Cajun food down there. You can't go through Maine without having a lobster, right? Okay. So find out what is exciting about that area and check out those things in that area that are very unique. You're not going to find it again unless you go back there. Embrace the journey. Try not to focus on the destination, and enjoy that journey to get to that destination. Some of our favorite, most fun times in past vacations have been the journey between destinations. And they can be some of the more memorable if you open up and experience it and be able to recognize it when it happens. So enjoy that journey. I hope you enjoy this adventure with us, and I hope you enjoy being with us on here. I know Dawn would love to have been here with us. And tell you what, I'm going to go to one of our standard pre-recorded endings so Dawn can be with us at the end. So we're going to go ahead and end this video here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button.
And also hit the bell, and that'll let you know when we post every Sunday
at 2 o'clock. Give us a thumbs up for safe measure, safe travels, and we will see you on the road.
Sláinte.